Okay. So what is a use case? Okay, so use case is a formal way of representing how a business system interacts with its environment, right? So if you remember, we have the rectangle box, correct?
Yes.
And a rectangle box, whatever is inside of rectangle box
A
is our
function.
system. Yes. Okay, is our system, and that's what we need to build. And whatever is outside the system, okay, outside the rectangle box is something that is outside, okay, and we are not supposed to develop. That's the environment, okay, and our system needs to integrate or talk to those systems. That's why it says how a business system interacts with its environment. And within the box, we come up with the activities, right? So those are the activities that are performed by the users of the system, okay? And it's a scenario-based technique, okay? So what is a scenario-based technique? So when there's a scenario-based technique, you should remember that example. Which example? Fire in warehouse example.
Warehouse, yeah.
Okay. So tell what is scenario-based system? A scenario-based technique?
Based on the scenario, we form a.
So we come up with one specific scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. So we describe one scenario. Okay. Now one scenario, as you know, it's just a scenario. It's not the complete way the system will interact. But okay, you have to talk about one complete scenario, and then you can talk about what other changes you can notice or you can make there. Okay, that's what this says. So scenario based design and sequence of action. Okay, what is sequence of action? What do you first? What do you do
Step by
first?
step. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you next? Right?
Yeah.
So all these things we put together in the use case diagram. So the first thing that we need to find out is who's the actor. Okay, so who's the actor? Actor is a user. Okay, and definitely it is outside the system, right? That interacts with the system being designed in order to obtain some value from the interaction. So actor is someone who's going to obtain some value from the interaction. And use case describes scenarios that describe the interaction between users, which are the actors, and the system itself. That's why actor is an important part of our use case diagram. It talks about who are those people going to interact. Then comes use case diagram. Okay, so in use case diagram, we describe what a system will do. Okay, so use case diagrams are closely connected to scenarios, right? Each scenario will become a use case diagram. Okay, now let's look at this here. A patient calls the clinic to make an appointment for a yearly checkup. The receptionist finds the nearest empty time slot in the appointment book and schedules the appointment for that time slot. Okay, so this is your scenario. Okay, so scenario will have entry point and exit point. What is the entry point or trigger point? We also call it a condition that will kickstart the scenario. What is the trigger?
Entry condition.
What is the entry condition? So entry condition here is when someone calls the reception and asks for an appointment. Okay, if they call and ask for time, and the things will not kickstart this use case. This use case will kickstart only when someone is asking for appointment, and that's when you will use the appointment system. Then go through it, look at the available slot, and then you say, okay, your appointment is booked, and here is your appointment ID, confirmation ID, whatever. So once you get that confirmation ID, that's when the use case or scenario will end. Okay, this is how you will describe. So first thing, you have to give it a name. Can I give it a name to this scenario? This is a scenario, right? Give a name to the scenario. You can call it make use case. Sorry, make appointment, right?
Yeah.
Or create appointment.
I'll check it.
Okay. Now, okay, for your reference, the text is written down in smaller font. I want to know, okay, who are the actors here? How many actors are there? Who are the actors?
2 actors are there, receptionist and the patient. Yeah, patient calls to the receptionist for appointment. So in this present scenario, in present, 2 actors are involved.
So see, in this case, we have only one actor, which is the patient. The receptionist is just a medium, okay? But it's the patient who is going to tell that I want an appointment at what time, with which doctor. No, I can't come at so and so time. Cancel it. Okay. So the receptionist is only facilitating the usage of system. Okay. The receptionist here is not making an appointment. The receptionist, we can, if you know how to access the system, I'm not talking about the internal working. If you know how to access, you don't need a receptionist, right? So the receptionist is not an actor here. Who is going to interact? So if receptionist actor, she will be, she will not, let's say you take help of someone to do a transaction on ATM card. Let's say, you don't know how to do it. First time you are there, you take someone. That someone is not an actor. Okay, for some reason you are taking the help, but you are the actor in that ATM. Similarly, here patient is the actor, right? So first thing is,
Gaurav,
yes.
You gave various warehouse fire incident, right? Like scenario example.
Correct.
In that, John, like Alice called to John.
Correct.
In that, we took John also as a actor.
The role of dispatcher is to enter into the system. So dispatcher is an actor. Okay. And Bob and Alice was just to inform the dispatcher. Okay. So if you're talking about the system, Bob and Alice is not the actor. Okay. Now, which system you're talking about? You're talking about, feeding the information into system. There only dispatcher is the actor. But there are other activities. It's not just one use case. Here it is only one use case.
Yes.
Okay. In there we had a couple of use cases, right? Informing the dispatcher of a fire. Okay. So informing has a use case where you have Alice and John, not John, right? Alice and I think John, right? But with Bob, Alice and Bob. But no, Alice and John, Bob and Alice are together, right? So it's either Bob or Alice, right? Doesn't matter who's informing. So so if you talk about information, you have Alice / Bob. I told you, right, when you talk about ATM use case, ATM can be used by all 4 of us. So it doesn't mean that we 4 are actors. Actor, we have to name it as a group. So customer is an actor. You cannot say that, 100 people are
every person as an actor.
Right. So when we log into the system, we log in as an user. So user or customer becomes the actor, not Saurav or Meenakshi, right? Or Soumya or Benedict. So we are not by the name, but by the role. Okay. So here, how do you identify who is interested in the scenario system? In this case, customer is interested. Okay. Now, where in the organization is the scenario system used? Who will benefit from the use of scenario system? Of course, patient is going to benefit. Who will supply the information into the system? Right. So of course, yes, a receptionist is entering into the system. A receptionist is entering into the system the information which is given by the customer, by the patient. Okay, does one person play several roles? So we look at the role, not the person, right? So if one person plays several roles, so you talk about the roles, not one person. You can't say that one person will also manage ATM and also withdraw cash, right? No. Do several people play the same role? So you will have only one representation, okay, of actor. So actor can be a human being, can be a peripheral device, hardware. It could be another system, right? Or it can even be a time-based event. Okay. So time-based event is, let's say you are doing some maintenance activity at 12 midnight. The moment it is 12, it will start performing the action, right? So that's a time-based event. So when we spoke about interaction, right? Interfaces. So your system is there, which is inside those rectangle box, and your system has to interface or interact with outside system. So here, the patient is a human being, perfectly fine. But in the ATM use case you saw, if you talk about withdraw cash, the ATM software has to connect to the bank software to know whether your PIN is correct, whether you have sufficient balance into account, right? Whether you can withdraw that much amount or not. Let's say you have a limit of $1,000 and you have already withdrawn 1,000 from some other ATM. You have come to next ATM. The ATM should be able to fetch the details, right? That you have already crossed your daily limit, right? So the system has to talk to other system also, right? So when you talk about actors, okay, it's not always human being. It can be another software. It can be external, the peripheral device, hardware, right? Right. So when you swipe your card for access, right? So that's a hardware which reads and gives you access. So there you have a hardware device. Then time-based event, right? So some events would be scheduled for certain things. Okay, that this event will happen at 12 midnight. So okay, so that's a time-based event. Okay, so it could be your actors, and actors are represented like this stick figure. Okay, human being, head, hand, and legs. Okay, so use case is a summary of scenarios for a single task or goal. Actor is who or what initiates the events involving in the task of the use case. So who's the actor? Patient is the actor here. Okay, so you write patient. And then use case. Use case is a summary of the scenario. So what we read was the scenario, right? When you write the story, okay. So in you call it a scenario, or in agile world we call it as stories. Okay, so it is called as stories in agile world. So whether it's a scenario or a story, okay, that is the complete description. But in use case is the title. Yes. So make appointment, we can call it, right? We can call it make appointment. Generally, it's a two word. Okay. So appointment, and then you're making it, right? So you can have cancellation of appointment, editing appointment. Okay. So here you're making the appointment. So you have make appointment. So use case is make appointment. Actor is your patient, and we draw a line between patient and the use case, indicating that's communication. Okay, so it means that your actor is communicating with the use case. There is a communication between actor and the use case. Okay, so your use case is oval in shape, patient is a stick figure, and you have a line indicating communication. Yes, so this is how we draw a use case. Of course, it will be in a rectangle, right? So the rectangle can have more than one use case as well. So use case tasks refer to as a use case that represents a feature needed in the software. Okay, so the use case represents the feature, obviously. Actor is who triggers or who is involved in that activity. And communication is the line that is shown between actors and the use case. So you have make appointment, you have patient, and you have arrow here indicating communication. Okay, so the communication or the relationships. Okay, so no question on actor and use case, correct? You understand what actors and use case are?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now the relationship, the communication, okay. What is relationship? It's the communication that is between actor and the use case. Okay, and it is depicted by line or double-headed arrow. Double-headed means both the side you have arrow, right? So left side you will have less than sign. On right side you will have greater than sign. Okay, and we also call this as association relationship. Association, okay, where it is between actor and the use case. Association, okay, or communication, okay. Now, and then you put a boundary around it, indicating that it is a system that you are going to develop. So boundary indicates the system that you are developing. Okay, so this is an example. So you have make appointment, patient. Produce schedule information. Management wants to know how many appointments are there for today, right? So they can print the appointment sheet. Okay, so produce schedule information is one use case, one scenario, and management can produce it. Doctors will have ability to record availability. Let's say tomorrow doctor is not coming to office for some reason. So doctor can go and cancel or block saying that not available on so and so date. So that way what happens? Patient will not be able to, yes, will not be able to book an appointment. Okay, so this is an example of a system which has 3 use cases. Okay, make appointment, so schedule information, and record availability. Okay, so that relationship that you saw between actor and use case is also called as association relationship. Association relationship. Apart from that, we also have few other association or relationship, not association, relationship, called generalization, include, and extend. So these are relationships that exist among use cases. Okay. So when use case, okay, speaks to actor, it is association. Use case will speak to another use case also, right? See, when ATM software talking to a banking software which is not in scope for you to develop becomes an actor. But if you're developing that system also as part of the project, will come inside the boundary, right? Will come inside the boundary because you're developing, it's part of the system that you're developing. So the interaction will still be required, right? So not that interaction is not outside system, but interaction is with internal use case only. You understood?
Yes.
So internal use case can have 3 relationships: generalization, include, and extend. What does that mean? So generalization is used to represent a child to parent. Okay, child to parent. Parent is the main use case, and the child use case, okay, will be called by the parent. It will not be called by any other use case. It will be called by the parent. Example, let's say withdraw cash, right? Okay, is your main use case. Now, before withdrawing cash, you have to check if you have sufficient balance or not. Okay, you have to check whether you have not exceeded your daily limit, right? So in this case, there are two use cases which you can create separately. So one use case will create only to check the balance is there or not. One use case will check whether you have exceeded daily limit or not. Okay, now you can develop that as a scenario or as a scenario of the parent use case only. Okay, you don't have to create another feature. We can say that check balance, withdraw cash itself will have it, but it has its own advantages when you put things separately, right? You put things separately, it can be called with other use case also. Let's say if other use case also needs to check the balance, right? And if you develop as part of the first use case only, then other use case will also have to write the same logic. But if you keep a single logic of checking the balance, all the other use case can call check the balance, right? It's called modular programming. Okay, so it's always better that you break into smaller pieces so that code is reused. Code reusability means saving time, right? You don't have to redo again and again. Okay, so that's why it's better to use child use case for this. Okay, one is that the child can be called by multiple use cases, so better you keep it separately and let it get called. Okay, so reusability is what you are. Second case could be that particular use case is not always called. Okay, or you don't need to call always. Okay, so for example, invalid pin, right? So let's say if you check your pin and only when you enter, very rarely you would enter, right? Maybe if you're doing 10-time transaction, probably one time you'll enter. Okay. So the invalid probably out of 10 times, okay, probably one time you might enter wrong pin, right? So invalid pin message, for example, okay, would be required when you enter it, right? It's not always that all the 10 times you will get that message, right? That's an example where you will be getting once in a while. So if you're doing something once in a while, why call that code again and again, right? When it is required, you call it. Okay, so that is another reason of writing a separate use case. So we have seen two scenarios. One scenario is where you will have to call it again and again, like balance check, right? Before every time you say withdraw cash, it will check your balance, right? But again, you put it because it can be used by other use cases. Second scenario is where you will call the use cases rarely, not every time. Okay. Third scenario could be, okay, since you have complex logic to execute, you have complex things to do. So purposely you will break it into multiple child use cases. That's why you see generalization, include, and extend. Okay, so three scenarios. We'll see which comes where, but understand the scenarios. First scenario is where you have complex logic. For example, if you remember the second example, so we will discuss two examples of use cases. Second, ATM use cases. The second example of ATM use case, in second example of ATM use case, you must have seen that we had transactions, and transactions had 4 or 5 child use cases. Okay, because transaction is a complex thing, so instead of focusing on one complete transaction, we are breaking this down into multiple 4 to 5 child use cases. Okay, it's complex to do one, so you break it for your convenience. That's that. We call it as generalization. Generalization is when you're breaking one into multiple child use case. Okay. Okay. Second thing is when I said that you are putting it separate as child use case, but you're calling it always, right? Checking balance, for example. That's an example of include. In include type, you will always check it. Extend is sometimes you will check it, not always. Okay. Okay. So this is okay. Now you tell you look at this use case. Take a minute to read this, and let me see who can explain me a complete use case. Okay, done. Who wants to talk about it?
I understand the basic outline of this diagram, Saurav, but I'm a bit confusing the part where extended use extend in the include. Yeah.
So yeah, tell me how much ever you understand, then I can correct it.
Okay, basically it shows the appointment system in a hospital. So take patient information. Before making an appointment, they update the patient information, and then make old patient appointment and new patient appointment. If the patient already consulted before, so it goes under this category, make old patient appointment. If the patient want appointment again, so that is goes to this category, make old patient appointment. And if the patient is new to the hospital completely, he wants to make an appointment for the first time, it goes under the make new patient appointment. And then make payment arrangement. Okay. If the patient is already if the patient is old, it goes to the make payment arrangements, because he already visited before, like he already did an appointment before this appointment. And if the patient is new, schedule information. Schedule information. Okay. Okay, management providing the schedule information in the system, and then doctor in that only manage schedule option is there. If the doctor is available for the to take a patient consultation, he'll record the availability in the record availability category, like whether he is available or not, he mentioned in that record availability option. That's what I get. So
Okay. Anybody else?
It's the same thing what Meenakshi said. So
No, what you have to say. And you feel free to repeat it.
yeah, this is like again to schedule an appointment. When it is a new patient, what scenario takes place, and when it is an old patient, what takes place. For the new patient, it is like make new patient appointment. For old patient, it is make old patient appointment, and then it is summarized to make appointment. And then the management will work on scheduling the information. And with the doctor's availability, the appointment is scheduled. But still I have a doubt is when everything works on the management side, how could you segregate it to extend and include Saurav?
Sorry.
No, when it is all on like on the back end, or when it works on the management team, how will you differentiate it as this is extend and this will be include?
So what is the difference between extend and include? Tell me.
Yeah, at that time my kid was.
No. I'm asking you, what is.
Me, so I didn't follow that extend and include.
So can somebody help her? What is, when do we use include?
Yeah, Saurav. Whenever include comes, like if the produce schedule information is one part, and the includes breaks the in that part into smaller parts, and extended K means adding the steps to the particular step. See, if update patient information is there, right? We're adding the make appointment to that. So there we can use extend. And when we break the one part into smaller parts, there we can use include as per my knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay, now tell me, what did you understand?
When you can break it down, break down the thing, it is include.
Mhm.
And when it is the same thing, it is extend for the
It
whole
is same
information.
thing.
Where's everybody quiet?
Quite.
No, tell me what. Tell me clearly. Treat it as an interview. Tell me.
Include is like adding in by breaking down the information. And extend is like many, one or many of the.
That's the only thing I spoke about today, and I repeated it almost 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, I understand, but with one
So
little kid.
include is the use case which you will always call. Whenever you are doing, you will always call. So it's like your, it's bad example, but probably it's easy to remember. It's like your um, slippers or footwear. Okay, whenever you're going out, you will always wear the footwear. So this is like produce schedule information. You see the bottom. Whenever you will call produce schedule information, manage schedule will be called always. Record availability. When doctor is recording the availability, it is always calling the manage schedule. So the use case which is always called by another use case is we put as include. When it is called sometimes, not always, that's when you use extend. Okay, for example, here you have make appointment. Okay, so we are making an appointment and patient says that my phone number got changed. Okay, then you will call update patient information. Okay, if the patient, let's say there's nothing got changed, right? They then you don't need to see new patient. Yes, you have to create a new patient appointment. Okay, but when it is old patient, okay, you will only create the appointment. But if patient says that my phone number changed, my address says changed, something got changed, that's when you'll update the patient information. Let's say update patient information, okay, in case of scheduling appointment is not include but extend. So your scheduling appointment, okay, and your, let's say, message will go to your old number. You say my number got changed, so you go and update it. Only if required, if you are calling, it is extend. If you are always calling, it is include. So I told you in the example that checking balance is always called whenever you're doing any kind of transaction. So your checking balance will be your include.
Include.
Okay. Invalid pin number is not always called. Okay, maybe once in 10 times. So you will put it separate and call it as extend. Okay, when it is always called, why do we not attach it to the main use case only? Why do we have to put it separately? Okay, if you always have to go out wearing footwear, why don't you stick your footwear to your feet? Okay, the reason is that other use case might also be calling it. Now here you see the managed schedule is called by two use case. So if I attach it to the one use case, the problem is that I will have to repeat the code for record availability as well. Twice the effort. Same logic, but you are doing it twice. Why? Instead, you put it separately, let it be called by two use case. Okay, if it is always called, then why don't you merge them together? If you merge them together, you can only merge with one at a time, isn't it? That means you will have to write same logic, same line of code again. What? Second use case also. Okay, so one thing is you'll have to spend more time, do it again. Second thing, if there's some change in the process, you'll have to do it at both the places, right? So it is time consuming to do that and also difficult to maintain. That's why we put it differently and separately and let other two use cases call it. Okay, so this is an example of appointment. Okay, on one side you have patient. Patient can be new patient and old patient. So here what you're using is your generalization. Okay, so one patient, because new patient and old patient will behave differently. So you created two different users. Okay, and generalization, and old patient will directly go and make old patient appointment. In old patient appointment, you will only call the patient ID and the doctor ID and things like that, much faster. That's why you have separate use case. And then it is extend make payment. So let's say last time when you visited, you had some pending balance. So it checks any pending balance or not. There is no pending balance. Okay, so that's why you have this extend, okay, to check if anything is pending from last visit. Okay, then the new patient appointment is different because here you're asking about the patient information as well, right, before you make the appointment. So that's why these are two different ways of doing appointment. That's why you have two different use cases. Both of them point to make appointment. Both of them are pointing to make appointment. So it became make appointment is the parent, and these two child use cases belong to same, right? So become generalization. Now make appointment will sometimes called update patient information, not always. So you have extend there. So patient is calling the hospital system and booking an appointment. Then management wants to know what is the schedule for today. How many hours doctors are busy, which room is busy, so they want to know the schedule information. So it will produce schedule information. and then you have a managed schedule, okay, a use case which is being called by it. So every time someone runs produce schedule information, the managed schedule has to be called, right? So we call it as include and we put it there. Then you have record availability. If doctor has to, add or update the record availability, it needs to call the managed schedule. This is also include. So doctor will call record availability, okay, and it is calling managed schedule. 99% of the time, the include use cases will be called by more than one. They're being called by more than one. That's why they are put separately and right. So generally, when it's like this. Again, bad example. Okay. Why do you put TV? Let's say you want to cut down the cost on TV. So we put TV on the drawing room, not in the bedroom. Why? Because anybody can use it, right? If you put it in the bedroom, then probably only you can use it. So this is like that, putting it outside so that anybody can use it. So whether it's a case of extend or a case of include. So that use case is kept separately. When you don't have to call it always, you don't want to be watching TV 24/7, right? So that's why you put it away from you. Whenever you want, you go watch and come back, right? Extend and include. Okay, so include represents the inclusion of the functionality of one use case within the another. Okay, arrow is drawn from the base use case to the used use case, and we write include on top of that line. Okay, extend represents the extension of the use case to include optional function. It's optional, not mandatory. Arrow is drawn from the extension use case to the base use case, and we write extend on top of it. Okay, so same thing. Okay, use case pros. It reduces redundancy. It reduces the complexity. While developing use case, you reduce the complexity as well, right? But sometimes, okay, when you have lot of features to talk about, okay, then it can get definitely complex. It is easy to understand because see, when you look at here, within one diagram, it conveys a lot of things, right? You know what it's trying to do. But again, let's imagine that it has what 8, but let's say you have 20 here. It becomes complex, right? You don't know from where the line is going to where, communication is going to where, right? So it can get complex as well. Okay, but it has a lot of benefits. I'm not going to get into it. You can read it. But did you understand what use case is?
Yes, sir.
Find actors, find use case, organize the model. That means put that in the rectangle and put actors and use cases. Prioritize use cases, describe use cases. So once you are done with the use case diagram, then you have to describe the use case. And describing the use case, we have to use the discussion, the steps that we discussed before. Actor, name, ID, actors, and then you start mentioning like, what is the trigger point, and then the flow of events and the exit criteria. Entry, flow of events, and exit criteria. Okay, so do you describe in detail and then refactor the model? Okay, just see if it is correct or you have to redo it. So there are some use case diagrams. You can look through it. You can do some Google search as well. Just type use case diagram in Google and go to images. It will show you a lot of use case diagram. Please refer. That's the assignment for today. Okay, UML and other diagrams, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Today, you just go to Google, type use case diagram in the Google images. Okay, Google images, go and look at all the images. Try to understand. Maybe you can write down 2 or 3 in your notebook. Just look at the image, the image of the use case diagram and try to explain in your words. Okay, the use case diagram is also UML only. Okay, UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. Okay, Unified Modeling Language. Here you have different types of drawings that we use to understand the model. One of them is, of course, use case. There are a few others that we'll talk about tomorrow. Okay, like class diagram, sequence diagram, package diagram, state diagram, package diagram, deployment diagram. You don't have to do everything in the project, okay? But depending upon your requirement, you will do it. Okay, use case diagram is important, so you have to do it. Other diagrams, okay, fine. I mean, it's good to know and good to practice, right? We're learning, so try to learn as much as possible. Okay, shall we end today? Any questions before we wrap up? If no question, then